Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Jurassic World Rebirth, and I wanted to give you guys my full review. It's very, very mixed. I personally really enjoyed this movie. I think it's one of the best Jurassic World movies, but at the same time, I think that that's a really low bar to clear, and I think on one hand, I think that the concepts in here are so interesting that it made me enjoy the movie a little bit more than the movie actually is a good movie. So let's dive into this, shall we?
Modern movie review.
Okay, so right off the bat, I do want to go ahead and say, I think that this movie is, in my opinion, like I said, better than the last Jurassic World movies. I think that they have a little bit more of an interesting concept here. I like the fact that they make it more of an exploration movie, and the dinosaurs are kind of in the wild, and it's these people going into the dinosaurs land, as opposed to Jurassic World, where they like really fleshed out the theme park, and a lot of it is just like the things going wrong inside of the theme park. I like that, and I think that that's definitely an interesting concept. But when you have the title Jurassic World and it is contained to a theme park, it's like, why did you even bother calling it Jurassic World? This one, in my opinion, lives up to the name better. I think that that's fun, and for the most part, I think that they introduced some interesting concepts, like dinosaurs are roaming the world now, just kind of all over the place. What happens when that happens? And on the one hand, I think that it could be really interesting, and I think that that's a concept that's really rich, and I would love to see kind of like one-off movies of like people having to deal with dinosaurs, like, you know, like somebody who works on a farm just having all their crops being eaten by some giant herbivore, and then them having to deal with it because like the government's not going to help them with that. I think that that'd be cool, and I definitely think that there's a lot of interesting stories you can tell in a world like this, which I think is part of the reason why I think that this movie's interesting, because it's the first step to a new kind of era and trilogy that you could potentially do with these types of Jurassic World movies. So I see a lot of potential here, and I think that for the most part, had they given this movie another like year or so of development, I think it could have been great. For people who do not know, they fast-tracked the hell out of this movie. This movie was announced last year, was recorded last year, and was released this year. And because of that, this movie, you can tell, has a very bare-bones script. And a lot of these characters that we are following in this movie don't really have any character arcs whatsoever, and they kind of are just like very basic and boring. And it also kind of sucks on the one hand because our two leads, right? I'm going to dive into spoilers here a little bit. I don't think anything that you happens in this movie could really be that big of a spoiler. So that being said, if you haven't seen the movie and you're afraid of it getting spoiled to you, maybe go watch the movie and come back to this video. But we're just going to be diving deep into everything that happens in this movie. So the two main characters, right? We have Scarlett Johansson, who's a mercenary. We don't get a whole lot of her backstory except for the fact that in her last go at this, or the last time she went on a job, one of the people on her team died, and it's alluded that it was somebody really close to her, so she's dealing with a lot of like, you know, PTSD almost. She's having a really hard time kind of getting over that, but at the same time, the second they actually get onto the island and start doing, you know, exploration stuff, that kind of goes away very, very quickly. So that being like the one really interesting thing going on with her character instantly is just not really there anymore. And then we have Jonathan Bailey, who's a scientist who, this is where it really kills me how much they waste the potential here. He's a scientist who's really obsessed with dinosaurs. He thinks that dinosaurs are super cool. He works at a museum where they're showing off, you know, the dinosaur fossils and everything. And he's like a very nerdy character who is brought on to a team of mercenaries to go into a place where they have a very high chance of dying, and they're going to be running into a bunch of dangerous creatures, and there's going to be dinosaur hybrids. And, you know, he's a nerd. He shouldn't by any means be prepared for that. And in this movie, he's 100% prepared for it. Like, he's somebody who's like a nature scout. He actually survives in the wild pretty much 100% by himself. At no point is there a sequence where, and this is where I think it would have been interesting, Scarlett Johansson's character is a mercenary. She's like the best at everything, right? She's really good at shooting stuff. She's really good at scaling mountains. She's really good at doing different like hiking things. She's really good at swimming. She's a very capable person, right? Jonathan Bailey, being somebody who's also super capable and has no problems, you know, scaling a mountain. He could figure that out. He could do it himself. Surviving in the middle of the woods, dealing with the fact that they're coming face to face with dangerous dinosaurs and stuff like that, and he doesn't really get scared that much. And it's like, what was the point of them both being the same character archetype? Because for a good character dynamic, you need one character who's, you know, more brave, more confident, can do a little bit better, and then another character who's a little more shy, but because he's like a smart character, he can kind of like help her out in other scenarios. They both seem to have the same level of knowledge, the same level of physical capabilities, and it makes it where their dynamic together really feels unnecessary. Like, every single problem-solving solution that they have in every single scene where they are stuck in a sticky situation feels like either character could have done the thing, but it just happened to be, okay, well, it's Scarlett Johansson's turn to save them from this scenario, or, oh, it's Jonathan Bailey's turn to save them from this scenario. And I think that that is really bad writing. Like, it gets to a point where it's like, you didn't even really bother making characters here. You were like, okay, well, this is just going to be the event that happens, and this is how they're going to get out of it. And then we can figure it out later which character does which, because none of them have anything distinct about them. And I think that that really makes this movie very boring. When you're watching a movie like Jurassic World or Jurassic Park, where like a bunch of people are potentially going to be murdered by dinosaurs, you want to have characters that are very interesting, and there's a lot about them that you're like really intrigued about, and you want to get to know more of the characters. You want to, you know, spend more time with the characters, and it makes it where when characters do eventually end up dying off, it's like a very impactful thing. But something I do not like about this movie is there's maybe about 5 or 6 deaths throughout this movie. Every single one of them super predictable. Every single one of them you don't really learn anything about, except for the fact that, okay, well, this person has worked with Scarlett Johansson before, or, oh, this person's the bad guy in the movie, and obviously by the end of the movie he's going to die, and just little things like that. And it really sucks because there's so much you could do in a film like this, and especially when you have at least 10 or 12 characters, but instead of having scenes where they're all together and you know, kind of see them in this family dynamic, it's like Mahershala Ali is friends with this one guy. So when he dies, it's like Mahershala Ali is going to be sad. And then there's one guy who's kind of a dick to literally everybody except for Scarlett Johansson. So when he dies, it's like Scarlett Johansson's going to be a little sad, but everybody else is going to be unaffected because he's been a dick to everybody else. And it's like, why should we as an audience care that these people are dying? We won't. Like, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And it kind of also makes it where it's like, with each one of those deaths where it's like a random useless character that we don't really care about, it makes it where our heroes feel more invincible because, oh, well, we know they're not going to die because they're the people who we actually know and the people we're actually spending time with. It's like they don't learn anything from like TV shows and movies where the random side character in a TV show randomly starts getting more screen time and then they die. Part of the reason they do that is so that it's actually impactful when they die. And this movie does like the total opposite. There's like this random girl who's on the ship who at no point do we really get what her deal is. Like, we literally do not learn a single thing about her. And then they all get to shore and it's like, okay, everything's going to be fine. They're safe now. But then there's that one girl who's a little bit further behind them. And obviously she dies. And it's like, oh my God, no, not the girl that we don't know her name. They never told us her name. And we don't really know what her deal is. She was just on the ship. Like, we don't know if she was like a mercenary or if she was like some kind of like special person when it comes to like boat related. Like, we don't know what her deal was. Mahershala Ali knew her, so maybe we should care. I don't know. We didn't even learn her name. And that's one of my biggest gripes with this movie is every single death sequence, and there's at least 5, we don't even know the name of the character that just died. They're just dead now. And it's like, I want to be emotionally invested in this, but you only care about Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, and Jonathan Bailey, that when all the other characters have their issues that they have, it doesn't really feel impactful. And for the most part, the only main character of those 3 actors that I just said who actually has like a significant thing going for them, and it's like, okay, this is why we want to root for this character, is Mahershala Ali. He's somebody who, and I don't think this is a spoiler to say it because it's like one of the first scenes you see with him in the movie. He's a father, but his kid has passed away, and it kind of created this like really big issue with him and his wife, and like they don't talk anymore. I think that they're divorced. It's like a very sad thing. And there's a family in this movie who, that's kind of like the secondary group of people we follow throughout this film, who they have a distress call. They have a run-in with some sea dinosaurs, and they have a lot of issues, and they end up coming on board with this group of people as they're going to this really dangerous island. And Mahershala Ali is just like, you know, really hesitant to take them to this island, but also we need to get to this island so we could get to safety. So he's, you know, very much protective of the kids that are a part of this family, and that gives him something to do. And that, for the most part, was really good. I love Mahershala Ali in this. I think that he's arguably the best part of this film because his character's entertaining. He brings a lot of comedic beats, and he's one of the few characters who, like, seems like the kind of character we should be following in this movie. And that being said, now that I brought up the family, I'll probably go ahead and talk about them and how, for the most part, I feel like there's either 2 things they should have done with this. Either make them the main characters here, because I think that there's a version of this film where we don't know really what's going on with the mercenaries and what they have as this goal. I think it would have been a lot more interesting if we're with this family. They, especially, oh man, I'm going to completely like rearrange this movie and do it the way that I would have done it. You ready? Stick with me here. So the opening sequence for this film, right? The actual version of that we see in the movie. They are on the island, right? There's people who are going into this test facility. They're going to go check on the D-Rex, kind of see what's going on with him. They go into his cell, and then something happens with the ventilation system, and the entire security system malfunctions, and they get locked inside the cage with the D-Rex, and a guy gets murdered, right? That's a really scary thing that happens. And then they, cut to modern day, and it's 37 years later. We don't know what's going on that island, but we know that all those mutated dinosaurs have been able to break free, and they've broken containment, right? So we as the audience know this island is very scary, very spooky, right? But I feel like what they could have done instead, right? Like I said, I'm going to rearrange the entire movie. This is how I would have made it, right? Also, I have the benefit of hindsight, right? So I'm not saying by any means that, oh my God, the people who made this film are stupid for not doing it this way. I'm just saying, me personally, as somebody who's looking at this film and thinks that there's a much more interesting version of it out there, I feel like we should have been focused on this family, right? We have this family. There's this dad who just wanting to go on this one last sail trip with his daughter before she goes off to college. He has his 2 daughters with him. He's a divorced dad. He doesn't get to spend a whole lot of time with this. So this is supposed to be like a really great trip for him. And they get attacked by dinosaurs. They're stranded in the middle of the sea. They do a distress call. They're really feeling hopeless. Everything kind of seems like it's not going to work out in their favor. This father is kind of having a rough time with his daughter because her boyfriend really sucks and he really does not like him. And then, this happens. They kind of start seeing that the boyfriend does a couple of protective things and he's actually not that shitty of a person. And then when they do the distress call, this boat comes and picks them up. And everybody on the boat seems like an interesting character, right? They have a bunch of really weird weapons. They're intentionally going closer to the dinosaurs. And as a father figure, you're kind of like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Hey, maybe can we potentially drop us off at another dock or port and then you guys can go do your mission. But they're very insistent on, hey, we need to go to this island. So they end up doing that. They have everything play out the way that it does in the movie with the boat sequences, which are without a doubt the best parts of this movie. This movie has like a 20-minute period where it feels like Jaws. And I think that that's the best part of this movie. I think that all of the dinosaur sequences there look incredible. The boat race to the shore because the dinosaur can't go up on the shallow waters or whatever, incredible. Everything about that dynamic just absolutely fantastic. It feels exhilarating. It has that feeling of intensity that you would want out of one of these. But I'd continue with that being the next part, and then mostly just focus on what they're doing throughout this film, because it's a random family on a I keep wanting to say dragons. How to Train Your Dragons is still fresh in my mind. I'm sorry. But they're in a dinosaur-infested island. They have no idea that there's mutated dinosaurs out here. And it's a family that has no preparation for this. They don't have a whole lot of survival skills. It's this dad trying to bring his children to safety. And I feel like that story is a lot more interesting than the whole, we need to get this thing from this dinosaur. We need to get that thing from this dinosaur. We need to get this thing from that dinosaur. Because it kind of just feels like a video game. And for the most part, it kind of feels like they're playing the video game on easy mode because all of the main characters have so much plot armor that it doesn't really matter. There's no tension throughout the majority of this film because, like I said, Mahershala Ali, Scarlett Johansson, Jonathan Bailey, they all feel untouchable. There's one sequence where Mahershala Ali almost feels like he's dying. And I think that if they actually killed him off, it would have been a great moment. But other than that, this entire movie just doesn't feel like it has stakes at all, except for the family scenes. There's a sequence where they're in a raft and there's a T-Rex and the T-Rex starts swimming towards them, and that shit is terrifying. They're in these river rapids. Once again, they're in a raft, so they really would not be able to veer well if they did end up going down those river rapids. And if you extend scenes like that 4 or 5 minutes, would make for a lot more interesting movie, in my opinion, because as much as it's cool seeing these mercenaries and these characters who clearly can handle themselves out in the wilderness, just seeing this family dynamic was very interesting. There's a couple of heart-to-heart moments that work really well with the boyfriend and the dad, where the dad's trying to really be friends with the boyfriend, but the boyfriend is very much being a jerk 90% of the time, and he's just being somebody that you don't really want around. And eventually they have a heart-to-heart moment where the boyfriend kind of makes it seem like he's purposely kind of being not great so that the daughter would leave him because she's going off to college and he doesn't really feel like he has purpose in life and he thinks that she's too good for him. And there's a cool dynamic there. And I think that that's interesting. And that's one of the only characters that really gets fleshed out in this movie. And it's weird because he's a part of the secondary plot and he's not even one of the main parts of the secondary plot because the main part of the secondary plot is the dad and daughter dynamic. so what is going on with this movie? Why did they not know how to write which characters in which ways? And there's just so much happening at once, and none of it really is all that interesting, except for, like I said, that thing with the dad and the boyfriend. I think that there's some fun dynamics there, but overall, it's just not fun. I think that the dinosaurs obviously look beautiful. The VFX and everything is great. There's a lot of sequences where they feel super plugged in, and it is one of the like few issues with they did film on location here, right? Like they're filming in some really cool, beautiful landscapes. I believe in Thailand. That might be incorrect, but they're filming on location, and it does make it where like whenever they plug in the dinosaurs, there's a lot of sequences you can tell that dinosaurs are plugged in because obviously they didn't make dinosaurs, but they also didn't make some kind of like visual cue that they could use as the dinosaurs and then add the dinosaurs in later. But that being said, I definitely think that this movie has some perks. I think that, like I said, all of the boat sequences are absolutely incredible. The stuff with the T-Rex and the like little life raft that they have with the family, that's a whole lot of fun. I think that another downside to this movie, there are a lot of sequences where I guess like they don't want to have like every single sequence that shows off dinosaurs be dinosaurs versus humans. So there'll be sequences where like a human is like facing the camera, and then behind them there are two different dinosaurs fighting it out behind them, and they're like too scared to turn around and look at the dinosaurs, and then the dinosaur just ends up walking away, and it's like that feels out of place. And it also feels like a green screen because like at no point did they need to like run and avoid the dinosaurs that are fighting each other. Because here's my thing, right? As somebody who owns dogs, right? Sometimes when dogs get into fights, if you're standing by them, you're going to be fucking caught in the crosshairs there. So you're going to have to try to run away. And I think that that's something interesting that they also could have done is, okay, well, there's some dinosaurs fighting and they're not necessarily attacking you, but you're still in danger because that's a giant ass fucking dinosaur. And if they step on you or bump into you, you're going to go fucking flying. So that would have also been a cool scene to see. Maybe in the scene where like there's raptors and they're fighting against some bigger dinosaur and the guy is just like I said, staring directly at the camera and all the actions happening behind him having to like run to escape these random dinosaurs that are fighting and not even actually trying to attack him could have made that scene a lot more interesting. I just think there's a lot of little things here and there that would have made this movie significantly better. And then on top of that, they start this movie off with, oh, people are bored of dinosaurs because, you know, dinosaurs have been around for forever. And then this movie kind of makes us bored of dinosaurs. Like, you do the same things in all of these Jurassic World movies. Do something different, please. Like, I feel like they really should go the Fast and Furious route and just make everything off the rails. Like, we're going to do mutant dinosaurs. We're going to have dinosaurs mutant together. Okay, let's make some crazy fucking concoctions. Like, the D-Rex is sick. Like I said, he's only in 10 minutes of this movie. Do more stuff like that. Maybe make one of the evil corporations make, like, a mech dinosaur. And then, like, one team has to fight the mech dinosaur with a regular, dinosaur or something. I don't know. I'm sure they could come up with something cool and interesting and original. But that being said, this movie is fast-tracked. You can kind of tell that. And I think that, for the most part, it's solid. I just think that it does not live up to the potential. Does not live up to the hype. It's cool in theaters. Would I want to rewatch it? Potentially. I don't know. That being said, if I had to give this movie a rating on a scale of 1 to 100, I give this movie a solid 76. I do think that it has a lot of bright spots, and there's a lot of good like humor and stuff mixed in here. I think that the villain could have been significantly better. That being said, just some random rich white guy, and he eventually dies anyways, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that being said, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. Feel free to leave your thoughts on this movie down below, and I hopefully will see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Pow, pow, pow.